Throughout history, few subjects have inspired as much speculation, intrigue, and controversy as the alleged connection between the Catholic clergy and Freemasonry. For centuries, the Catholic Church has stood as one of the most outspoken opponents of the Masonic order, condemning it in numerous papal encyclicals as a dangerous, subversive force. Yet, persistent rumors and scattered testimonies have long suggested that some priests, bishops, and even cardinals may have secretly joined the very organization the Church forbade. This paradox, of men sworn to the Church's defense allegedly aligning with a group accused of undermining it, forms one of the most mysterious undercurrents in modern religious history. Freemasonry emerged in the early 18th century as a fraternity rooted in Enlightenment ideals of reason, tolerance, and human progress. Its rituals and symbolism drew heavily from stonemason guild traditions and esoteric Christian mysticism, but its philosophy increasingly emphasized individual conscience over institutional dogma. For the Catholic Church, which viewed itself as the sole interpreter of divine truth, this was seen as an existential threat. In 1738, Pope Clement XII issued the papal bull In Eminenti Apostolatus, the first formal condemnation of Freemasonry. He declared that its secret oaths, ambiguous spirituality, and promotion of equality among all faiths were incompatible with Catholic doctrine. Over the next 2 centuries, successive popes reaffirmed this stance, describing Masonry as a synagogue of Satan that sought to destroy Christianity and subvert moral order. Yet by the late 19th century, Europe was changing rapidly. The rise of secularism, liberal politics, and anti-clerical movements, many of which were believed to be influenced by Masonic networks, weakened the Church's authority. Amid this shifting landscape, rumors began to circulate that some within the Church itself had quietly joined the Masons, either out of ideological sympathy or personal ambition. The notion of Clerical Freemasonry first gained traction in the 19th century, particularly in France and Italy, 2 nations where both Catholicism and Masonry were powerful cultural forces. Reports emerged of priests attending lodge meetings, bishops participating in secret rites, and even cardinals exchanging coded greetings associated with Masonic ranks. Much of this evidence was circumstantial, drawn from anonymous letters, secret police files, or Masonic membership lists of dubious authenticity. However, certain cases appeared compelling enough to provoke official Church inquiries. One of the most notorious examples came in the 1970s with the so-called Pecorelli list. In 1978, Italian journalist Mino Pecorelli, known for his deep connections within intelligence circles, published a document alleging that over 100 high-ranking Vatican officials, including bishops and cardinals, were members of Freemasonry. Each name was accompanied by a Masonic code and initiation date. Pecorelli was later murdered under mysterious circumstances, and the authenticity of the list was never proven. Yet, the scandal ignited public imagination, especially amid the financial chaos and intrigue surrounding the Vatican Bank and the shadowy Propaganda Due (P2) Lodge, a clandestine Italian Masonic group implicated in corruption and political manipulation. To understand why these rumors struck such a nerve, one must appreciate the Church's perception of Freemasonry, not merely as a rival ideology, but as an organized conspiracy. In papal encyclicals like Humanum Genus, 1884, and Custodi di quella Fede, 1892, the Vatican depicted Masonry as the invisible architect behind revolutions, secular governments, and the erosion of Christian morality. The Masons were portrayed as masterminds of a new world order, built on relativism and the rejection of divine authority. Thus, the possibility that clergy could be working as agents from within was viewed as profoundly threatening. A priest who took Masonic oaths of secrecy and brotherhood could, in theory, be serving 2 masters, the Church and the Lodge. Theologically, this was untenable. Catholicism demanded absolute allegiance to the magisterium and forbade participation in organizations that promoted religious indifferentism. Yet, from another perspective, the notion of a Masonic infiltration reflected broader anxieties about modernity. The Second Vatican Council, 1962 to 1965, with its calls for openness, ecumenism, and dialogue with other faiths, was interpreted by some traditionalists as evidence that Masonic principles had indeed found their way into church policy. For them, clerical Freemasonry became a metaphor for internal betrayal, the belief that progressive reforms were secretly engineered by those sympathetic to Enlightenment rationalism. Those who believe in the existence of clerical Freemasonry often describe it as a network of influential churchmen who act to harmonize Masonic humanism with Christian theology, or to subtly reshape the church from within. In this view, such figures are not necessarily malevolent conspirators, but rather intellectuals seeking to modernize religion by aligning it with universalist, rationalist ideals. The alleged purpose of this hidden fraternity varies depending on who tells the story. Some say its members work to promote church-state separation, social reform, and interfaith cooperation, values shared with Masonry. Others claim they aim to dilute or dismantle traditional Catholic authority altogether, paving the way for a secular world order. Critics point to certain theological trends, such as the downplaying of sin, the acceptance of moral relativism, or the embrace of symbolic rather than literal interpretations of Scripture, as evidence of Masonic influence. Proponents of the dual allegiance theory argue that priests who secretly join the lodge are seduced by its ideals of fraternity and intellectual freedom, finding in it a spiritual camaraderie that the rigid hierarchy of the church does not always provide. In recent decades, the notion of clerical Masons has persisted, though in more subtle forms. Some conspiracy theorists claim that the reforms of the modern papacy, especially under Popes John XXIII, Paul VI, and Francis, reflect a hidden Masonic agenda to universalize religion and merge faiths under a single humanitarian philosophy. Traditionalist Catholic groups, such as the Society of St. Pius X, SSPX, have occasionally accused church leadership of being influenced by Masonic ideas, especially regarding moral liberalization and ecumenical outreach. Certain fringe publications have even alleged that specific prelates were secretly initiated into Masonic lodges, though no verifiable evidence has ever been produced. Interestingly, the Vatican has not been silent on this matter. In 1983, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, led by then-Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, later Pope Benedict XVI, reaffirmed that Catholics who join Masonic organizations remain in a state of grave sin and are prohibited from receiving Holy Communion. This declaration was prompted by confusion following the 1983 revision of canon law, which had omitted explicit mention of Freemasonry. The reaffirmation suggested that, even in modern times, the Church still regarded Masonic involvement as a serious spiritual danger, perhaps hinting that internal suspicions had not disappeared. The challenge with the topic of clerical Freemasonry lies in the scarcity of hard evidence. Most accusations rely on anonymous sources, unverified documents, or circumstantial patterns. Genuine Masonic membership lists are secret and often localized, making verification almost impossible. Moreover, given the Church's long-standing condemnation of the craft, any priest found to be a member would have strong motivation to conceal it. That said, secrecy is a double-edged sword. It breeds both mystery and myth. The very opacity of Freemasonry, its oaths, symbolism, and rituals, naturally invites speculation, especially when juxtaposed with the Vatican's equally secretive bureaucracy. Both institutions operate within layers of tradition, authority, and ritual, making the idea of their hidden overlap irresistibly dramatic. Some historians suggest that the myth of clerical Masons endures because it expresses a deeper psychological truth: the tension between faith and reason, obedience and freedom, mystery and enlightenment. The figure of the Masonic priest becomes a symbol of this inner conflict, a man torn between loyalty to divine revelation and the allure of human wisdom. The rumors of priests and bishops as hidden Freemasons persist, not because they are proven, but because they capture a timeless anxiety about corruption, secrecy, and divided allegiance within sacred institutions. Whether rooted in fact or born of imagination, they speak to a fear that even the holiest orders are vulnerable to the seductions of worldly philosophy. In the end, the legend of clerical Freemasonry is less about secret handshakes or coded rings, and more about the struggle for the soul of modern religion. It represents the uneasy coexistence of tradition and progress, belief and doubt, obedience and curiosity. For some, the very idea that priests might secretly join Masonic lodges is an outrage, a betrayal of faith. For others, it is a testament to the universal human search for meaning beyond the boundaries of doctrine. Whatever the truth may be, the story endures because it reflects one of humanity's oldest questions. Can the servants of heaven ever fully resist the mysteries of the earth?